Have you ever felt like a broken record? Constantly nagging your child to do the simplest things? If that sounds familiar, you're definitely not alone. We often think the answer is to just be stricter, right? But what if there's a totally different and honestly, a much more effective way? Today, we're going to dive into a Japanese concept called Shitsuke, and it's not at all about forcing obedience. It's about cultivating something way more powerful, real internal self-discipline.
Okay, so let's get right into it. First things first, we've got to be super clear on the huge difference between obedience and self-discipline. Look, on the one hand, you've got obedience. That's all about external control. It's you, the parent, having to use constant reminders, maybe some threats or even rewards, just to get something done. But on the other hand, self-discipline, well, that's a child's own internal compass. It's their ability to manage themselves, to find motivation from inside, even when you're not standing right there. Now that is the real goal here.
So what exactly is this Shitsuke thing? Well, the word itself gets a bad rap sometimes. People think it means strictness, but that's not it at all. It literally translates to teach the body. The whole idea is to help a child's body learn a habit so deeply that it just becomes second nature, totally automatic and effortless. It's about building up good behaviors, not about punishing the bad ones.
I love this quote because it just nails the whole philosophy. Seriously, think of self-discipline exactly like a muscle. Every single time we remind, or we rescue, or we do something for our kids that they could probably do themselves, we're basically lifting the weights for them. And what happens? They don't get any stronger. Shitsuke is all about taking a step back and letting them do their own reps.
So how do we actually do this? How do we help them build that muscle? We're going to break it down into 3 really practical strategies. First, we'll look at how to structure their world. Then we'll talk about why it's so important to nurture their competence. And finally, and this one might be the toughest, we'll cover the art of waiting.
All right, let's kick things off with structuring their world. Now, this is not about creating some rigid, super controlling environment. Nope, this is about understanding how a little kid's brain actually works and using that structure to help them literally build the neural pathways for good habits.
Just try to see it from their point of view for a second. A young child's working memory, their mental whiteboard, it's tiny. So when we start firing off a bunch of commands like get your bag, find your shoes, put on your coat, it just hits them like this confusing wall of words. Their brain gets totally overwhelmed and just tunes out. It's not them being defiant, it's just pure cognitive overload.
So, what's the fix? We need a better system, and it starts with 2 simple steps. First, you replace that wall of words with a visual routine, a simple little picture chart for the morning or for bedtime. This moves the whole task out of their overwhelmed thinking brain and into their habit brain. And second, you stop commanding and you start asking ownership questions. This simple switch hands the responsibility over from you to them.
This is such a critical shift, and it actually changes what part of the brain they're using. The command on the left, put on your shoes now, that can easily trigger a reactive, fight or flight kind of response. But the ownership question on the right, hey, what's the next step on our morning chart? That engages their prefrontal cortex, the thinking, planning part of the brain. It makes them the boss of their own actions. See the difference? They aren't just obeying you, they're following their own plan.
Okay, this brings us to our second big idea, nurturing competence. You see, kids are actually hardwired with this deep, fundamental need to feel capable and to contribute in a real, meaningful way. Real self-esteem doesn't come from us just saying, "You're so great." It comes from having a real job to do.
And we're not talking about huge, overwhelming chores here. We're talking about microtasks. I mean, look, a 2-year-old can carry their own little backpack or help put napkins on the table. A 4 or 5-year-old can totally help fold some washcloths or sort laundry by color. These small acts of contribution send a powerful message. You are a valuable, needed member of this family.
And how we talk about their contribution is so important. That generic, good job, it kind of makes them dependent on our praise. But if you use what we can call the specific spotlight, you build their internal motivation. Saying something like, I noticed you remembered it was your job to feed the dog. Or, hey, I saw you put all the napkins out, focuses on their action and their internal sense of responsibility.
Here's another cool trick, quiet modeling. Kids have these things called mirror neurons, which basically means they are built to copy what you do, not just what you say. So instead of making a big announcement like, okay, everyone, it's time to clean up, just quietly start putting a few toys away yourself. I'm telling you, more often than not, their brain will mirror your calm, focused action, and they'll just join in without you having to say a single word.
And that leads us to our final and maybe the most difficult pillar, mastering the art of waiting. And yeah, This one is really about us, the parents. It's all about giving their brains the actual physical time and space it needs to process things and solve problems on their own.
Get this, it can take a young child's brain up to 10 seconds to process a request and then plan a physical response. 10 seconds. That's an eternity in parent time, right? In Japan, they have concepts for this: mimoru, which is watchful waiting, and gaman, or patient endurance. When your kid is struggling to zip up their coat, our gut instinct is to jump in and just do it for them. But if we can just wait for those 10 seconds, we give them a chance to build real resilience.
But that waiting has to come from a calm place. You simply cannot yell a child into being calm. You can't rush them into being patient. Their little nervous system mirrors yours. So before you step in to correct or to help, you have to ask yourself one question: am I regulated? Because a child can't learn self-control from an adult who's lost theirs.
Which brings us right back to where we started, to that central analogy. Every single time we jump in too quickly, every time we give one too many reminders, or we solve their small problems for them, we are lifting the weights for them. We are literally robbing them of the chance to get their own rep in, to build their own muscle of self-discipline, of competence, and of resilience. So as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with this one question. Think about your day, your routines with your child. What is one small weight that you are consistently lifting for them? And what would it look like to just step back, wait those 10 seconds, and let them try to lift it all by themselves tomorrow? Because that is where the real strength begins.